Hello and welcome to another FPL video. Today we will be going through the club friendly roundup, a little bit of an overview of some of the new signings that have got some minutes across some of the more experienced teams in the league, so we'll be focusing on the top 6 sides mostly, and a couple of hidden gems that have arisen as potential options for our FPL teams at the start of the season. So, to start with, we're going to go through Manchester United, because I'm a United supporter, and I've been kind of wanting to talk about them for a little bit. So, we will start off with we're only going to go through one of their fixtures, and it was the game against Crystal Palace. They've had a couple of games pre-season where they've actually been scoring quite a few goals. So we've played Melbourne Victory, won 4-1. We played Liverpool, won 4-0, and we played Crystal Palace, the most recent game, and won 3-1. Now, the opposition that we are playing and the teams that we are fielding in some of these games is obviously not, across all these teams actually, is obviously not the starting teams. The ways that these teams will line up at the start of the season. The coaches are still trying players out in positions, working on combinations between players. Formations might still be up for grabs in some squads. But for some of the games, there has been a bit more of a clear indication of the strength of the squads that were starting. So when I say that, I mean you can obviously tell that some of these teams look like an A side versus a B side, where there may be a couple of people chucked in here and there to try out in a couple of spots, or if it's a complete squad of players that are likely for the bench or coming back from injury. So to read out the United squad that started the game against Crystal Palace, we had De Gea in net. Had our new signing, Malacia, who got his first start of pre-season, starting on the left. Then we had Maguire and Lindelof instead of two centre-backs, with Deleuze starting on the right. Then we had McFred in midfield, and with Rashford on the left, Fernandes in the centre, and Sancho on the right in front of them. And then the solo striker up front in Martial. Now, this is a pretty strong squad. Probably the noticeable talking points here is Malacia actually gets the nod here to start against Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace didn't bring their strongest squad with them. I think they had a whole bunch of problems with COVID and passports and all sorts of stuff, and they actually even had, I think they played United at like, I can't remember what time it was, but then within like 12 hours they were playing another game with a completely new squad somewhere else in America. So we just bring up the Crystal Palace lineup so you can kind of see what we're talking about here. This is the way that Crystal Palace started the game. They had Butland in net, they had Mitchell on the left, Anderson and Ward in the middle of defence, Klein on the right, and they had Milivojevic as your CDM playing captain. Flips and Saki in front of him. Then Ibioe and Ayu as the left and right of a 4-3-3, and Mateta up front. Now, the strongest Crystal Palace squad were actually, I think, even in a different city. Most of their normal starting players. So this is a much weaker Crystal Palace side that went up against United. Now, throughout the game, there was some very interesting points. Now, the result is the result. I won't go too much into the results pre-season because it's not really about that. It's about, where are players on the pitch, who is looking like they've got a good touch on them. Yes, goals are great and all sorts, but, these teams are like changing. You're getting like 10 subs at the 65-minute mark. Sometimes they're starting with their weakest squad and subbing on their best squad at half-time, and you can't read into any of the results yet. In the next couple of weeks leading up until the kickoff for game week 1, you will notice that the managers will be honing in on their first 11 because they want to get as much game time as possible with the combinations that they've been working on in training, and to see what the players actually do in a real life game that's not on the training pitch. So United started with this formation and this lineup. At half time, they made or was it half time? Sorry, at half time, they made one sub and they took off McTominay and brought on Donny van de Beek. And then at the 65-minute mark, they made a further 8 subs, where the only players that stayed on the pitch that were still there, well, Van de Beek obviously still stayed at the 65-minute mark. De Gea stayed in net at the 65-minute mark. Malacia stayed on and played right the way through until about the 80th or 85th minute. So it was a very clear indication that Ten Hag wanted Malacia to get as many minutes under his belt as possible. That's something definitely keep an eye on, because Malacia is in the game as 4.5 for Manchester United. Now, I would not recommend, having watched the preseason games, going for any of the United defenders, regardless of how cheap or how attacking they may or may not be, until we see some sort of change in the way that we defend. I've got a couple of screenshots here. The Liverpool game, we won 4-0. We could have quite easily been 4-4 in that game. We defended terribly. Even when we were playing against the kids, we weren't even playing against Liverpool's top squad, and we had most of our starters. We just looked woeful in defence. Great going forward, but just terrible in defence. So I would very much recommend dodging the United defence, at least for the start of the season. I'll pick up a couple of things here. In the 3-1 defeat of Crystal Palace, the goal that we conceded, De Gea. What the hell was he doing? It's about 5 minutes before he lets the goal in, 5 or 10 minutes, he made an epic save down to his left. Very quick shot from close range. He goes down to his left, gets a great solid palm to it, and puts it out for a corner. I was like, wow, that's great. That's the De Gea of old. That's what we like to see. I was a little bit concerned about De Gea because Ten Hag's obviously going to be drilling into him that he should be playing like a sweeper keeper role. Focusing a lot more on distribution of the ball in order to fit the system that Ten Hag likes to play, with his wing-backs sitting very high up the pitch. Now, De Gea was great at this when he started his season ages ago, but it has almost been trained out of him. So he's relearning some of his old skills of ball distribution. He's looking okay. He's looking a little bit shaky, but I don't know if it's because he's focusing too much on where he needs to be in the rest of the game or whatnot, but this goal that he let in was horrific. It was a lazy jump. Yeah, the kids were on the pitch and they didn't contest the corner too well against, I think it was Ward who scored the goal or whatever. But it was a lazy shot. Yeah, it was down to his left. But De Gea just looked like he was about a second in delay of reaction time. Like, he should have just gone, "I'll catch the ball, thank you for that," and then just got on with the game. But he just kind of watched it come down and then decided he needed to dive late and let it in the goal. Now, we don't need that from our fucking number one. We've got already Maguire in front of us, who's already a ballerina that just can't keep up with the pace of the game anyway, let alone Ten Hag's style of play. And we've got De Gea making mistakes like this in pre-season. It's worrying. If we go to Maguire, oh man, I was hoping Ten Hag would be able to, I don't know, get a better goalkeeper coach or something. Defensive coach, and actually drill into Maguire actually how to turn 180 degrees and sprint in a different direction. You know, get him doing some shuttles or something. But oh my god, it was painful to watch Maguire in the preseason games. Now, if I bring this up, this led to a goal that was deemed offside. Which is all fine and good, so our positioning's okay. But this is Maguire, center of where he should be, stepping forward to head the ball out like a good lad, like he should. He's uncontested, not blindsided, and this ball off his head ends up not coming back towards the camera as you would assume, but it actually goes, the ball's coming in from right to left. It's an easy head back out, and for somehow he's glanced the header into the Crystal Palace man standing on his left, which rebounds into the path of the three guys that are actually standing offside in front of the goal. Heading was a good part of Maguire's game. Now he seems to have lost that. So, our defence not looking great. So I'm not going to... Yeah, maybe I'm going a little bit harder because, you know, United is my team and, you know, you're always a little... It's kind of like a... You know, your a dad that coaches his son in the team. They always go a little bit harder on their kids or, you know, the teams that support. So we'll go into a little bit more of their attacking positioning. And if we pull up this. Now, in the Crystal Palace game, we won 3-1. We had Sancho, Rashford, and Martial all on the score sheet. They all looked like they were buzzing in and around the place, getting amongst the defence, causing trouble. Our attack does look good. It looks really good. And the pricing in FPL this year is so much so that we should definitely be keeping an eye on how United progress, because Martial up front for 7 mil is an absolute steal if he starts the season, especially considering how he's playing. He is buzzing around, he is feeding his teammates in, he's making a mess of the defence, and he's scoring goals. He's shooting and he's scoring goals, he's smiling, he's looking happy. Now, Ronaldo's obviously not played any minutes yet in the start of in pre-season, and I am more and more, as I watch United play in Ten Hag's style of football, of the mind that Ronaldo cannot keep up with the pace of what Ten Hag is asking his solo strikers to do. Martial was right across the defensive line, high press. He is the key man to get this press started, and the press looks good, to be honest. He is pressing those defenders well. The team is coming in behind him, and we are winning the ball quite high up the pitch. Ronaldo, as great as he is at finishing and how much of a goat he is getting on a little bit, and that amount of running around for no value, well, for no Ronaldo return value, I suppose, it's just going to burn through his energy, and I don't know if he's going to be able to do that for 90 minutes, and I suspect that's why Ronaldo's kicking up a little bit of a political fuss in the background and saying he's a little bit unhappy and potentially looking to want to move elsewhere. I think he realises that the way United are moving forward is going to be a much more pacey style of attacking rapid football that requires a very hardcore press from up front, which Ronaldo will not be able to do. Now, he might be a great player to come in off the bench at like 60-65 minutes when everyone's tired from, you know, just being absolutely battered by, you know, the likes of Rashford, Sancho and Martial racing around the pitch, causing havoc all over the place, and come on and score a few goals. But I don't know if he's actually going to start many of the games and be able to actually do the work that Ten Hag wants him to do. So definitely keep an eye on that. And the screen, the image that I've pulled up on screen is to highlight the point in the game when Martial got through on goal. He went one-on-one with, I think Butland was in net. Slipped the ball past Butland. Butland had absolutely no idea what was going on. He'd even turned his face away, and it caught his hand and ricocheted across the 6-yard box, as you see here. Now, Rashford, if he was sharp on the ball and the Rashford that we knew of about a couple of years ago, he would be sitting on that 6-yard box about a little bit before where the end of this arrow ends. If he had just taken 3 steps forward here, he gets another tap-in goal. Now, good that he's up there, but why is he not a couple of steps forward? He had more than enough time in this in this movement, this attacking play, to get into that positioning, to be where he should be instinctually, and he's not instinctually there. Now, he's either too tired from running around like a crazy man doing all the pressing that Ten Hag's asked him to do, and he's actually sitting back a little bit because it's pre-season. He doesn't quite have the fitness levels that he requires, or he's just not quite onto it yet. Yeah, he scored a great goal. It was a great team goal, and he was on the 6-yard box and got given a pass with basically an open net where the keeper was already beaten and he passed the ball in. And he was in the right position, but it was earlier on in the game. I'm just hoping that he goes back, looks at this game and goes, holy hell, I could have easily got another tap in here. I need to work harder. I need to be higher up the pitch. So definitely keep an eye on Rashford. His shooting was not confident. He's still getting over whatever he went through last season, but the signs are progressive. He is getting better. So it's kind of a wait, watch, and see. You could take a punt on Rashford because it does look like he's going to start. And 6.5 million on that left wing coming in looks like a really good good value option. But I think we'd just wait for a little bit until he seems a bit more switched on. I'd be more inclined to go for Sancho if you were going to spend the extra million, because he just looks a lot more on the ball. He's great runs forward. He's looking like a second striker, whereas Rashford is a bit more behind the pace of the game. Sancho and Martial have been linking up quite well in the build-up plays as well. And if Martial is starting the season at 7 mil up front, he could be an absolute steal if you're looking to slot in a striker in that sort of price range. And the final thing I want to bring up with this screenshot that you've got on here is the wee lad that's standing just to the right of Rashford, well up the pitch in the 18-yard box, is the young lad Malacia. Now, I didn't know much about Malacia, and I hadn't seen him play much, but I did, spend a lot of my a lot of my tactical awareness when we did and didn't have the ball on actually where Malacia was placing himself, and when we did transition from defence into attack, what he was doing, and how high up the pitch was he sitting. Malacia seems to be sitting higher up the pitch than Delo in right back. He seems to be delivering the ball more often into the box. He's actually got a great shape on his delivery as well. So some of those balls that he was whipping in didn't connect with any of the United players at the end of the delivery, but the shape of the delivery, like Malacia just whips it in with his left foot. It doesn't go very high. It's got this great curve on it, and it just comes in at a perfect height for a striker to just use the pace of the ball and guide it towards net. They don't have to put a hell of a lot of strike power into these shots that come off Malacia's cross. Now, the goal that Martial scored at the start of this game actually started with Malacia coming down the left, cutting back to his right, and actually using his right foot to hook it right the way across to Delo in the far post, who was standing unmarked, who brought it down and then chipped it right the way back across to Martial, who was standing far post. So he assisted the assister in the first goal that was scored in the game. And I did notice that Malacia was quite often this high up the pitch and busting his ass to get there all the time. So even if he wasn't there, because maybe the play broke down on the right-hand side and he was already trying to scamper back to get to his defensive positioning, as soon as that ball switched around, he was rapid and getting back in straight up the pitch as high as he could get to get back in and join the attack. Now, that's what we love to see from any sort of wing-back. You want to be targeting those players for your FPL teams, because their routes to points are just so far and superior to anyone else. And he was taking corners from the right hand side. Now, I don't know if that's what he'll be doing for the whole season, but he was whipping those balls in as well. So there's another route to points for a 4.5 million attacking player if United can sort out their defensive woes. Now, we have signed Lisandro Martinez from Ajax, I believe, is where he came from, to rejoin with Ten Hag. Where he goes in the team, I don't think he'll start the season because obviously he's coming in a bit late, hasn't even touched the ball pre-season. He does know the style of play that that Ten Hag wants to play. He does know the system and he does know what's going on. But the thing that worries me the most, and I have no idea why this has happened, Ten Hag has given Maguire the captain's armband. I don't know if this is a last-ditch effort of, hey mate, it's about time you stood up and actually inch your 80 million. I mean, it's not his fault he got bought for 80 million pounds when he wasn't even worth anywhere near that amount of money. It was a scramble buy and actually a bit of a panic buy, I think. But even to be giving him the captain's armband pre-season, it's a bit. I mean, you then have to. You have to strip him of the captain's armband. So, I guess for Ten Hag to strip Maguire of the captaincy pre-season was probably a bigger move. I would say he would have to come in pre-season and actually see Maguire being very terrible and someone else being way better for that captaincy to switch over. For, in terms of political reasons and optics for, a manager just coming into United, it's pretty hard to strip an existing captain of his armband without good reasoning. But the fact that it hasn't happened yet, I'm a little bit worried. It kind of almost guarantees Maguire's minutes in the United lineup, which, I mean, he's our main problem. Anyway, let's skip out past United because I could talk about them forever and I've already talked about them enough. But to summarise very quickly, when Telles came on at the 65-minute mark in this match, he came on at left centre-back to play next to Malacia, also indicating that Ten Hag definitely wants Malacia's minutes in that position. He wants to get the fitness up and to get his positioning awareness ready, it looks like, for the start of the season, over and above his competition in Telles. So if you are a little bit worried about Telles, then Malacia's minutes based on Telles, check out the next game that they've got coming up against Aston Villa, tomorrow at 9:45 PM my time, New Zealand time, so that's probably like, 10 or 11 AM UK time. Chelsea played last night, and I sat down and watched their full match against Charlotte. Just as an aside, the American commentators for all these American matches. It's a brilliant, entertaining listen, because I don't think they fully understand the intricacies of football for it to be, but they've just got. And I was in hysterics listening to these guys throughout the match. At one point, there was a card given late in the Chelsea match, and an American guy goes to the other guy, I don't even know what the commentator's names were, and he's like, "Oh well, that's a red card offence." I think it was a handball, which ended up in a penalty to draw the game 1-1 for Charlotte. And the other commentator checks in on his mate. He's like, "Red card, mate? Are you sure? What colour was it?" And the commentator goes, "I don't know, mate. Doesn't really matter." And just continues on with what he was talking about. It's like, oh, dude. And these things are actually really important in football. And they clearly did not know or understand the vast difference in skill level of, the Chelsea lineup compared to the American teams that they were playing. I mean, any of the top 6 Premier League teams could have put on their B squads and been well better than any of these American teams. watching the Chelsea game, that first half. So Chelsea put on the team you'll see on screen, which I'll read out in a second, for the first 45 minutes, and then they completely switched the team around for the second 45 minutes. And both teams just shat all over Charlotte, really. Like, they didn't even get out of second gear, and they were just basically playing around as if it was a really fun warm-up match or something. But for the people on the podcast that do not have the visuals, I'll just read out the Chelsea lineup. We had Mendy in net, then a back three of Emerson, Silva, and James sitting as the back three. In front of them, across the middle four, we had Alonso on the left, Jorginho and Kovacic in the centre of the park, and Hudson-Odoi out on the right-hand side, so sitting in front of James. And then three across the front. In front of them, we had Ziyech on the left, Batshuayi as the striker in the centre, and Pulisic out on the right. Now, this team did not change up until half-time. They had like 72% possession, I think, and even when they didn't have possession, they didn't really look like they cared too much that they didn't have to be honest. They just looked like they were chilling out, enjoying the sunshine over in America because, well, why not, right? Some interesting points from this team that I did pick up was James didn't get very far forward when he was playing across the back three, as he shouldn't in this lineup. But I was kind of wondering, you know, if they did start attacking down the right, would they just kind of rotate around and sit maybe, you know, Jorginho a little bit lower and let James get forward so that, you know, maybe Silva switches over to cover him, and, you know, you get one of your CDMs lying a little bit lower to give James the freedom to get forward a bit more. And they didn't. Not at all. Alonso was the one that was getting forward and not really tracking back either too much in terms of any defending that they did have to do. Not that Alonso does that at the best of times anyway. But yeah, so James at the start of the season does look nailed. Looks like he will definitely get the nod. However, it does not look like he's going to be getting as forward as we have seen him in the past. Now, the reasoning for that, I think, is what happened in the second half when Tuchel made the whole team changed apart from Mendy and net. They played a back four in the second half. I didn't really know, to be honest, I didn't really know the Chelsea team in the second half too well because it was largely a B team squad. The only players I did know was Chilwell sitting on the left. Sitting in front of him was Sterling. They went to more of a 4-2-3-1 in the second half. 4-2-3-1 when they didn't have the ball. And then they kind of sort of like rotated through the left-hand side of the pitch in attack. So in the second half, they did, for the first 15 minutes of the second half, Chelsea had about 90% of the possession. So they were hardly ever sitting in this 4-2-3-1 defensive formation. They had, I can't even remember who the striker was. It wasn't Batshuayi, it was someone else. Someone who's not going to be playing for Chelsea in their starting 11. And then they put Havertz in the middle of the pitch, who looked like he was the one that was meant to be getting into that striker role. However, what happened is they actually, when they had the ball, they switched back to a three at the back. Chilwell stepped well forward to come up and play on the left wing where Sterling was playing. And Sterling rotated through into the centre of the park and actually played as more of a false nine or a striker. That first 15 minutes of attack, you often saw Sterling running through the centre of the pitch, playing the shit like a number 9, which they may be doing. That might be Tuchel's master plan here. Instead of what you see with Alonso starting in a 3-4-3, you may see a back four with Chilwell starting in the back four, Sterling in the front three of a 4-2-3-1 instead of Ziyech, and then they rotate into a 3-4-3 when they actually have the ball, where Chilwell will step forward into Alonso's spot, and you'll see Sterling more as an actual inside winger, if not like kind of a false nine floating around with Havertz. He was doing a lot of interchanging with him. Now, if I bring up a screenshot of this is not the game against Charlotte. This was the game prior, I believe. What is it? To double check this. This is the game before the game before, yeah. So in this instance, Chilwell actually started this match. This was another B-side starting Chelsea team. And what you'll see on screen is Chilwell sitting smack bang centre of the goal, edge of the 18-yard box, unmarked, when number 23 from Chelsea, who I believe his name is Sa, is taking a shot. Now, Chilwell started this movement from left back, went down the left-hand wing to whoever was playing in front of him, who did a 180, came back, and Chilwell had continued his run. Instead of Chilwell running down the line, he had run pretty much on a 30-degree angle, starting to veer in towards goal. The left winger passed the ball inside to Chilwell. He did a 1-2 with the centre of the park that ended out on the right to 23, and Chilwell just continued his run right the way through to where you see him on screen. You see this often from Chilwell. He loves to get forward, loves to get into the box, and I think that's why James has been tagged as the player who's going to sit back a bit more and do a bit more defending if both Chilwell and James are on the pitch, with James sitting in that the right hand side of the back three, probably more for his pace on the counter attack. Chilwell looked great in this first match. His touch was stunning, his footwork was rapid, his movement of the ball and his runs were looking awesome, like really, really good to see. Now, in the second half of this, Chelsea here are in yellow. This is the game against Charlotte. This is the second half when Chelsea were actually up. This is Chelsea without the ball. You'll see the ball's down here on the left-hand wing. Chilwell and Sterling were playing both on the left-hand side, working together in tandem. Bit of overlaps and whatnot, but what you would find is Chilwell was the one that was hugging the touchline, allowing Sterling to actually float in to the middle of the pitch, as you'll see on screen here. This is them without the ball, so this should be them in their more 4-2-3-1, but they have just lost the ball, I think, in this screenshot. And you'll see that Chilwell's already quite high up the pitch, and they're actually kind of rotating back a bit more into their 4-2-3-1 formation for defence. Now, in attack, this was them just after they lost the ball after attacking, but you will see the red arrow on screen. That is Sterling. The head of everyone. You see Chilwell's out here on the left, relatively high up the pitch. I believe this is Havertz, from memory, sitting just next to Sterling. But every attack, every movement, every time, even if the attack started on the left and Sterling had the ball, he was just running straight to the centre of the park all the time. It was like Tuchel had said, as soon as we get that ball, mate, you get into that number 9 spot. I got a couple more screenshots here. I'll just bring up the next couple. You'll see Sterling up here is out on the left again. Left's like 2 strikers. They're actually playing with 2 up front. That is not the normal positioning of a left winger. Like, he's actually playing as more of a shadow striker, only with the ball there. And what I did notice is that further into the half that this game went on, the less that Sterling actually managed to get forward, because the opponents were too easy. They had too much of the ball, and he could make so many, like, Sterling's rapid, he is a fast sprinter, but he made so many sprints, like half-field sprints at full pace, that by the end of the game he couldn't do it anymore because he was just too tired from sprinting pre-season. But you'll see in this movement, this was an open. This was the fight. How the ball ended up in an open play attack. That red arrow again is Sterling, sitting right up, right high on the right hand side in front of the net, ready to just tap in anything that's coming back post from, I believe. I think this was actually Jorginho that had stepped out to the left hand side here. Is the ball out? I believe out here now, and Chilwell coming in. Ghosting in from behind. This was a very rapid counter-attack, and Sterling, I believe, actually was the man who made the run and darted infield here to end up where he is at the end of that red arrow on screen. But for 10 million in a Chelsea attack with no Lukaku, Batshuayi is your only other striker, or the only other player that looks like he's actually going to be playing as striker. You might find that even though Havertz has been listed as an 8 mil forward this year, you might find that he plays more of your number. He might start up front as your number 9, but he may just be dropping back into the centre of the park to play more of a duo number 10 role with Mason Mount, and you might find Sterling actually come through into that false 9 shadow striker alongside whoever else is playing up front, because he's used to that role from playing with Pep for so long. That might be Tuchel's master plan to cover the fact that Lukaku has gone out on loan. I'm not sure, but definitely something to keep an eye on, because if he's at 10 mil playing as a shadow striker with that amount of quality in behind him and a pretty good run into the season, that 10 mil awkward price point might be worth investigating a little bit further to see if we can eke out some value from elsewhere in our pitch, in our team, to put some money into Sterling and jump on Chelsea and potentially a 10 mil striker playing, out of position midfielder playing up front for Chelsea. However, they will be doing quite a bit of. He will be doing quite a lot of defensive work, because as soon as they lost the ball, he was straight back into that 4-2-3-1 formation and getting back to help cover Chilwell, because obviously Chilwell's more attacking minded than he is really defensive minded. Right, and Arsenal have had a couple of few pre-season friendlies. I've only managed to catch the last 2 of their games against Orlando City and their game against Everton. Some of these games are coming thick and fast, and to sit down and watch all of them proving to be a little bit time consuming, quite tricky. But what I have, the game against Everton looked like Arsenal actually lined up with their strongest pre-season lineup to date. Now they had Turner in net, Tavares, Magalhaes, Saliba and Suarez across the back. Xhaka and Thomas Partey in front, with Martinelli, Odegaard and Saka as the front 3 in front of them, and then Jesus up front. They were playing against an Everton lineup of... Oh, why is that opened up over there? Just bring this on screen. Pickford and net with a back 5 of Nkunku, Holgate, Mina, Godfrey and Patterson. They then had Decore, Davies, Dele, Ali and Gray sitting in front of them, and then Calvert-Lewin up front. Now I know this says it's a 5-3-2, but it didn't really look like that when they played. I'm not too sure how that's came up with a 5-3-2 there, but it looked like Calvert-Lewin was playing up front by himself with Gray in behind for most of the match. Everton looked terrible. I'll just cover over them briefly. They did not look great at the end of last season, and not much has changed in preseason. They just lost today or last night against Minnesota 4-0. They did not look great against Everton. They did put out a relatively strong lineup against the Aston squad, but yeah, I would definitely be targeting Everton fixtures start of the season for sure. They don't look like they've sorted out their problems yet. Jesus is looking awesome. Definitely changed Arsenal's attack. He's getting in and around the areas, shooting a lot. Jesus is not the best finisher in the league, but it looks like he's going to get enough opportunities to he's going to be able to shoot enough to score enough goals by the looks of things. Martinelli started both games, which is great to see. In the Orlando game, Arsenal did look like they put out a much weaker squad to start off the match. Obviously, Orlando aren't as competitive an opponent as Everton. But for the sake of the listeners on the podcast, they started with Ramsdale in net this time. Tavares on the left, Murray and Holding in the centre of the park, Cedric out on the right. With Maitland-Niles and El Neni in front, Martinelli on the left, Lokonga and Pepe as the three in front of them, and then Nketiah up front. Martinelli did score in this game. They won 3-1. They'd made wholesale changes after half time. I didn't actually see this match. I only caught the highlights, and there weren't too many highlights of the end of the game. But what it did look like that had happened was Martinelli had been pulled. So they'd pulled a lot of the players, but Nketiah had stayed on the pitch and was playing in Martinelli's spot out on the left when Jesus came on up front. So Martinelli for 6 million, starting on the left-hand side of that front three, looks like a steal. He's a great player. He was favoured in front of Emile Smith-Rowe last season, and it looks like the same is continuing into the start of the season. And with Jesus in front of him, running around like a madman and actually doing a lot of work with a lot more link-up play, Martinelli may get pulled in to the attack more often than he did last year, and could be an absolute steal at 6 million. Now, someone else to keep an eye on at Arsenal is Zinchenko, who has just signed from Man City. Now, he has made the move to Man City because he wants to play as more of a midfield role rather than a defender, which is where he was playing for Pep. He wants to be playing centre of the park, which is where he plays for Ukraine and in the national squad. And could do very well in Arsenal. He'd be an out, especially for our FPL teams. I think he's listed as 5 million. Zinchenko, he's on my watch list. Let me just double check. I'm pretty sure he's on page 2. My watch list is going to page 2. He's listed at 5 mil, still as a City player, but will be moving to Arsenal to cover the left back spot when needed. But part of his discussion to move to Arsenal was he wanted to play in the centre of the park, and that's the only reason he moved. So if he gets the nod and gets quite a bit of playing time and actually nails down that spot, a 5 million listed defender playing in the centre of the park for an attacking Arsenal squad with great fixtures at the start of the season, definitely be one to keep an eye on. Now, past Arsenal, we'll go to Man City. Man City have a very light pre-season schedule. They were actually playing at exactly the same time, or they had overlapping games when Chelsea was playing. So I was watching the Chelsea game as I was much more interested in what was happening with the likes of Chilwell, Sterling, James and how they were actually lining up. So I watched that full 90-minute match and only managed to catch the highlights for Man City, of which there is not many out there, and they're actually quite brief. Jack Grealish played for the majority of the match and kept getting wiped out by his opponents. He got quite feisty in the game, but he looked like he was much more involved in the attack. He was coming in off the left wing, getting taken out on the edge of the 18 when he's trying to line up shots. He looked a lot more involved. Mahrez also started on the right side of the pitch and played most of the game. Set up Kevin De Bruyne for his first goal. I think might have been his second goal. Set him up for one of the goals. Looking lively, started the match. 8 million Mahrez is an absolute steal in City if he's nailed on. However, we still don't know where Foden's going to line up. Haaland didn't even get dressed. he was sitting in casual clothes on the side of the pitch watching the game. They've only got one more match pre-season friendly before, and then they play their Community Shield match against Liverpool. So we're not even going to get a hell of a lot of insight into what's even going on at Man City. So they're already hard enough as it is to nail down who's going to get the points, or who is even going to start. But I am a little bit nervous about going for Mahrez. I love Mahrez as a player, and I've put him in my squads in previous seasons too much. He's one or the other. He's either great and scoring heaps of goals, or he's getting like 10 minutes as a sub appearance off the bench. So he is definitely a roller coaster of a ride, of a player to own. But Man City play Bayern Munich on Sunday the 24th. That's their final pre-season friendly game. And then they play Liverpool in the Community Shield on the 31st. And that's their last game before the season kicks off. So hopefully we get to see Haaland against Bayern. Hopefully we get some idea of how City are going to line up. Just to read out what's on screen, we had Ortega in net with a back four of going from right to left, Walker right back, Nathan Ake and Mbete in the centre of the park, and Cancelo at left back. They were playing on a 4-3-3 with Bernardo Silva, Rodri and Kevin De Bruyne as the three across the middle of the park, and then Mahrez, Grealish and Álvarez up front. Now, I think it's Jose Álvarez for 6.5 million in the game, who actually had a really good game. He looked like a really good player. Whether or not he's actually going to get minutes throughout the season, he could potentially be a covering player for Haaland. Haaland has made comments that he was looking at going to, I think, Real Madrid because of the lack of preseason that they were going to do, and because he's still carrying, niggly injuries that he's trying to get over and whatnot. Which is probably why he was also still in casual clothes for this first match. He's wanting to ease his way into the season, and so therefore I'm now concerned about his minutes. He might be a 60-minute man for Pep for the first 5 weeks of the season, just to make sure that they don't ruin their only striker in the squad. You may see Álvarez coming on for Haaland at the 60-65 minute mark. You might even see Foden playing as a false nine, potentially as cover for Haaland. Foden could be out on the right, he could be playing on the left in Grealish's spot. We just don't know what the hell Pep's going to do. So Man City, unless you're going with Cancelo or Kevin De Bruyne, really hard to know who's actually going to start the season, where they're going to be playing. So we won't go into Man City in too much detail because there's just not enough info out there at the moment for me to give any sort of clear indication as to what we should be looking at. I'm going to go over a couple of other teams very briefly. So if we go West Ham, West Ham had a game against Rangers. They got smashed 3-0, 3-1, I think. They did also line up with a relatively strong squad as well. So if I just read out the West Ham squad against Rangers, we had Fabianski in net with Cresswell at left back, Ben Johnson at right back, and Zuma and is it Aguerd? Naif Aguerd and there's the two players centre of the park. We had Pablo Fornals sitting in CDM with Declan Rice and Lanzini sitting in front of him in the centre of the park. And then out on the left-hand side, we had Said Ben Rama with Jared Bowen out on the right and Mikel Antonio up front. Now, I saw the highlights of this game as well, and there was not much highlights of West Ham. I don't know what they were doing. It was just all Rangers. So I don't know if they're just a little bit slow to start off the season. They also start against Man City first game up, so that's a bit worrying. Jared Bowen was taking the corners, but I didn't really see a hell of a lot to get excited about at the West Ham squad, to be completely honest. So another wait and see. I believe they've got another preseason friendly match coming up very soon. Can't remember who they're playing. Newcastle had a game against Mainz, Mainz, and I can't actually remember the squad for this. I did actually sit down and watch this match. It was Newcastle versus Mainz. It was 1-0. 1-0 to Mainz. That's right. It was a pretty lackluster game. I only managed to capture this screenshot from the match that they played at a very small stadium. I'm not even sure where they were playing, somewhere in America as well, I think. The only thing that I did notice out of this, watching bits and pieces of this match, was I had my eye on Kieran Trippier, because Perisic still hasn't played for Spurs, and I'm looking for a potential replacement for Perisic, and I think I'm going to be dropping down to a 5 million either Kieran Trippier or Matty. And so I was quite closely looking at Kieran Trippier's positioning and what was going on. He doesn't seem to get too far. He wasn't getting too far forward in this match. He was still on set pieces, dead ball specialist, and he did clip the wall in what looked like a very good shot from just outside the 18-yard box in one of the free kicks. But apart from that, there wasn't a hell of a lot to get excited about. I mean, Malacia looked more attacking than Trippier, and he's 0.5 million cheaper. Newcastle also don't have an incredibly good run into the season. They've got pretty tricky set of fixtures after game week 2. So they start the game against Nottingham Forest, which is a great game, and then they're away to Brighton, which is an okay fixture. It's not great, but it's also not easy. But then they play Man City, Wolves, and Liverpool as the next 3. So unless you're really targeting those first 2 fixtures for Kieran Trippier and looking to make a very quick sub, I would probably be staying well clear of him, because unless he gets more involved in the attack, you're really only going to be relying on the odd assist from open play, or more likely just as dead ball free kicks. And it's not a hell of a lot to go on for the Newcastle squad, who still getting their bits and pieces together by the looks of things. They didn't look amazing, so they didn't excite me in any way. Aston Villa, however, on the other hand, I watched this game because again I was very keen to see what Matty was doing. He did bits for me last year. I had him in the double game week near the end of the season, where he scored 29 points across 2 games. And he had already been doing quite well for me up until that point. He was my stealth defender who was just getting points week after week, and no one had him. He's great. So I was definitely very keen to see on how Aston Villa lined up against their opponents in the Brisbane Roar. Now, the Brisbane Roar is an A-League side. They are not a great opponent. Aston Villa should pretty much walk all over them. And to be fair, they had most of the possession and looked much the better side. What I did notice, so the Luca Dean and Matty Cash both priced at 5 million at left back and right back in the Aston Villa squad. All of the attack for Aston Villa in this match went down the right hand side. All of it. Yes, there was some attack that did go down the left hand side, but very, very rarely did that happen. And when that did happen, it was hardly ever Luca Dean that was actually knocking the crosses in. Cash was delivering balls from the right hand side, just at the tip of the 18-yard box, out on the corner. He was whipping those balls in. He was running into the box and trying to shoot. He had one shot where he just completely mishit it, but he was shooting from a good spot, just didn't hit the ball very well. He's in the box, he's getting forward. Luca Dean seems to be doing a little bit more of the defensive work in the Villa setup, so they're defending a little bit more from the left, whereas Matty Cash is a bit more keen on getting forward on the right hand side. And so if it was a choice between those two, hands down, Matty Cash looks like the better option from this game. Luca Dean does have free kicks in his locker, and he did believe he took a free kick in that game from memory, but he did not look involved in the attack very often. And so for exactly the same price, I'd be much more keen on Matty Cash. And to be fair, I do have a bit of a bias considering he did so well for me last season. The other player that caught my eye was Leon Bailey, playing on the left side of a 4-2-3-1 styled formation, and when they were moving forward by the looks of things, priced at 5 million or 4.5 million. Just double check that. Bailey priced at 5 million, but playing in a front three. Now, he didn't attack a hell of a lot in this game. He did get the ball, and he did get the ball in advanced positions, but he didn't drive at the goal. He didn't even look to be the assister of the assister. He just looked like a player that was just there as kind of a rebound unit to bounce the ball off and most of the attacks. Now, he's just joined the squad and potentially just learning what he shouldn't be doing in terms of positioning and the players around him. But he didn't, like, his instinct didn't look like he was going to be that player that was really going to, bust his ass to get into the box and end up on the end of a cross, or take on defenders and get taken out for a penalty so that someone else can come in and he can get a fancy assist for someone scoring a penalty goal. Definitely one to keep an eye on because he is cheap and he's playing in, 5 million starter or potential starter for Aston Villa. If he can adjust himself well, he's going to be an absolute steal for an attacking Aston Villa squad. But I am a little bit concerned. Aston Villa's start to the season is okay for the first 4. I mean, it's not great. It's a bit tricky. The first 2 games are great. They go away to Bournemouth and then at home to Everton. Like I said, I'm targeting those Everton fixtures. It's a great fixture. But then they go away to Crystal Palace and then home to West Ham. Now, those 2 are a little bit tricky, especially that West Ham fixture will be quite hard. And then they're away to Arsenal and then home to City. So whoever you happen to be looking at, if you're looking at anyone from the Aston Villa squad, game weeks 4, 5 and 6 do look quite tricky, and so it may be a very short-term move, which actually suits me quite well, because what I'm really doing is just holding a spot for Perisic once I know he's bedded into that squad. Know that he's bedded in and that he will be playing quite attacking, as I suspect that he will. So Matty Cash for the first 3 weeks, even Luca Dean for the first three or 4 weeks. I mean, you can still play him against that West Ham game in game week 4. Still 2 very good options, but 2 very good short-term options. Anything past game week 4, you will be looking to either bench them or switch them out. And that's all the preseason friendlies that I have had time to review to date. There are more games coming up, and the games that are coming up are the more important games. These are the games where managers will really be honing in on who they on their starting 11 for the season. They will be wanting to get as many 90-minute matchups under the belt as possible, and we should start to see a bit more settling in the squads. The things to look out for in the other games that I haven't covered here, and some teams that you may be looking at, is which players are the managers of respective teams aiming to get as many minutes into pre-season. That's a clear indication to me, based on all the football I've played in the past, of managers trying to get players up to match fitness in order to start them for game week 1. So Malacia, I suspect, will start the next match for Man United and play 80 to 90 minutes in the next match. I'm very much looking forward to Chilwell starting in a Chelsea lineup. That has yet to happen yet. I suspect it will happen in the same game that Sterling starts. So as soon as you see, I suspect probably the next Chelsea lineup will have Alonso on the bench, Ziyech on the bench, and Sterling and Chilwell lined up in their spot. Chilwell looked fit, looked fast, didn't look like he was carrying any sort of injury, didn't look like he was pulling out of tackles or anything like that. Looked the business. So I'm very keen to see how he lines up in the next game. And I'm just checking the schedule. They have a game in the Florida Cup final. I don't know what all these American cups are that they're all competing for over there. It seems like they've introduced them all just to get the Premier League teams over to America. But Arsenal were playing Chelsea on Sunday the 24th, 12 p.m. New Zealand time, which is in a couple of days. That will be probably a good, clear indication as to what Tuchel is looking to do with his squad before game week 1, because they only have one more pre-season friendly before the season kicks off. Chelsea, excuse me, sorry for the hiccups. And they're playing Udinese on Saturday the 30th of July. Now, they are not a very strong squad or a strong opponent. And so probably not a very good test of a team that you want to settle on for your first game of the season. If I was Tuchel looking at my Chelsea squad right now, I'd be going, I really want to start my most likely starting team against Arsenal next week, rather for any of the players that I can get in there, rather than that Udinese game, because that Udinese game is not going to be a very good test of whether or not players that I am or am not sure about as a Chelsea manager, of whether or not they should be starting the season. So definitely keep an eye on that. Also, same applies to the Arsenal lineup as well. My prediction for the Arsenal lineup will be something very similar to the Everton lineup. Obviously, you won't be seeing Turner in net. You'll be seeing Aaron Ramsdale slip in there. It'll also be interesting to see if Ben White gets a run out. I suspect he won't. I don't think he's first choice at the moment. And also to see that Martinelli nails down that left wing spot against in that Chelsea game in that next preseason friendly. That will be very key. Obviously, this next Man City game against Real Madrid will have all eyes on to see Haaland, who should hopefully be starting in that match, to see how they will be lining up. I suspect they will start their most strongest squad of how they would like to start the season in that match too. Although they have not had much of a pre-season, and so they may still be quite, tinkering around with all sorts of stuff. Pep loves to tinker as it is, so we may have to wait until that Liverpool fixture in the Community Shield to see a bit more of a settled squad there. And the likes of Malacia at Man United, who I've already already touched on 4.5 million as a very attacking option in Manchester United. Could be a great shout. So that's all the preseason friendlies that I have managed to either sit down and watch the whole 90 minutes for, or catch some extended highlights from the past few days. There's a lot more football to come up, and obviously a lot more players out there to keep an eye on. So that the hidden gems, really, that we should be keeping a very close eye on for minutes and exactly how they are lining up to play the game is Malacia at 4.5 for Man United is dirt cheap. If we can get Lisandro Martinez in and actually start keeping some clean sheets, he will be a steal at 4.5. We have the likes of Chilwell being probably far more attacking than James at the same price if he manages to nail down a spot before the season starts. Sterling looks like he may be potentially playing as a false nine or striker when Chelsea are in possession of the ball at the moment, unless something else changes. Leon Bailey at Aston Villa at 5 million in a front three could be a great option if he can nail down a spot. However, if he doesn't start the season very well, he may lose his position quite quickly, because Aston Villa they've got an okay, as I said, first 3 games, but then it goes very hard very quickly, and if Leon Bailey is not pulling his weight, he may find himself on the sideline very quickly. Man City, keeping an eye on their back up to Haaland up front to see how much more game time he gets pre-season, because he did look great in well, at least the highlights that I saw of the match, in the very scrappy match that Man City played yesterday. And of course Zinchenko, the 5 million defender leaving from Man City to Arsenal to go and play in the centre of the park. Now, who he's actually going to be replacing in the centre of the park, I have no idea, and exactly how far forward in that team we will have to keep an eye on too. Who knows? He might even be vying for Martinelli's position. Maybe he wants to play left winger rather than right smack bang in the centre of the park. We will have to keep an eye on that to see what's going on. So if you did make it through the video, please do give this a like, and if you would like to keep abreast of more content coming your way before the game kicks off and throughout the FPL season this year, please do subscribe to the channel and click that little bell icon to get notified about all the videos flying your way.